What's up, security gang? Welcome to another episode of the CISO Talk podcast. I've got a special one. I'm recording this today when I think of International Women's Day, I think of obviously my wife, my mom, my sister, my daughter, who are amazing. But when we talk about the cybersecurity industry, there's a few names of some of our leaders that really stand out. And our guest on today's podcast is one of those. The awesome, the magnificent, the amazing Olivia Rose will be joining us here in just a moment. If you guys don't know who Olivia is, my God, where have you been living under? What rock have you been hiding? The former CISO over at MailChimp and Amplitude. She's now started her own endeavor as a vCISO. We'll be talking about that journey from being a W-2 to a 1099 and what does it mean? What's more difficult? Is the grass greener on the other side? So for all of us practitioners, this will be a lesson in that. So without further ado, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Tune in. Here we go. CISO Talk time, y'all. I've made a mistake. There we go.
From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're listening to the CISO Talk podcast. No sales, no bullshit, just straight talk. Straight talk. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Hello, Olivia.
Hello. I love the host and CISO.
Well, it's important, right? Because a lot of our podcasts aren't really done by us practitioners. They're by most of the people who potentially either want to sell to us or provide us some sort of service or product. And this is the one for us. I call this the CISO Talk podcast because it's really about us. And so happy to have you back on the show.
Yay, happy to be here.
Happy International Women's Day. It's so great to be recording with you on this day, especially with a lot of the stuff you put out there around, diversity and women in cyber and so forth. It's so important to understand the need for different backgrounds and different people in the room in order to really practice security effectively. And you've been a champion of that.
Yeah, thank you. I just do not understand why all men manels still continue to exist. I don't, like, when you look at it, it's all four white men. I mean, does nobody look around and go, we all look alike, so we're all going to say the same stuff?
So I'm going to just, for a second, play devil's advocate. Because, I've been on a lot of panels. You and I have attended a lot of similar events. We've sat at dinners. Some organizations, as you and I know, don't let their CISO speak at all.
Yeah.
Right. They don't want them speaking at any panel. They don't want them speaking at any event. They don't want them speaking. Like, they've got a clause that says you cannot publicly speak anywhere unless you get our permission.
Yeah.
There's that challenge, number one. Number two, a lot of people who come from a diverse background sometimes, and imposter syndrome is real. I think you, me, and Naomi a few years ago did a show just on that. The fact that imposter syndrome is very real, and some people feel like if they're on stage with someone who's got an MBA, right, and was a CIO and a CISO and whatnot, they feel imposter syndrome coming on stage, and so they decline to even be part of the conversations. I've had that happen when I've tried to organize panels where I've reached out to some great people that are really, really smart with diverse backgrounds, and I sometimes you just can't get them to speak.
Are you saying that women have imposter syndrome more than men? Because your argument does not make
I'm
any
saying
sense.
that what I'm saying is, though, that imposter syndrome, because of the lack of diversity sometimes in the field, when you look different and you come from a different background, imposter syndrome is even higher on a panel with potentially bigger names.
I don't know. See, I don't really agree. Coming from the
And
perspective,
that's okay.
Yeah, and that's okay. Coming from the perspective of actually doing it and knowing a ton of really sharp, smart women then who are leaders and CISOs,
right?
Very rarely would there be imposter syndrome because we look different.
Well, I'm not saying imposter syndrome is the only reason.
Yeah, okay.
Right? I'm not saying that's the only reason there's a lack of diversity on panels.
The reason, honestly, and I'll tell you point blank, the reason, honestly, is because people who put on these panels are lazy. And they don't feel like putting in the extra effort, because there is extra effort to find people who aren't the majority. To find,
Agreed.
I could throw, if I was putting together a panel, I could throw a rock and come up with 5 white men who are CISOs. But to find 5 women, or even just 1 or 2 who are CISOs or leaders, you got to dig a little bit, and they're just too lazy.
So when I used to do events and help put on events here in Atlanta, we used to make it a point that there could be no women moderators of our panel for the sake of diversity. If there aren't 2 women on the panel, there isn't a panel. Yeah, I love how panels will sometimes have 1 woman moderating 4 men. Thank you, but that's here's a list of questions to ask for men.
But we have diversity. This is what
we've got a woman interviewing. Hooray for us.
But what I don't understand is this. Men, I honestly love white men. It's not like I have anything, a vendetta against white men. I really don't. I love white men. And many of them are allies. However, what gets really annoying is when there are 4 white men on a panel, which happens every single day almost. Why doesn't one of them say, you know what? I'm going to step down and you can replace me with someone diverse, or say something. It's like they don't even see and say anything. That's what's aggravating.
Chris Rock over the weekend put his special on Netflix, and he diagnosed the #1 illness in America today. It's attention. In fact, he had a 15-minute skit or 20-minute skit in his hour and 20 minutes around the disease in America today. Went from love to attention. We used to seek love pre-internet, pre-social media.
Yeah.
Now we seek attention.
Yeah.
Give me a like, give me a love, give me a support. Tell me you're a friend. And that's why people don't step back. Because of that. Because they love the attention. They want to be on stage. They want to be heard. Even if they have nothing to add to the conversation. How many panels have I been to where everyone agrees? There's one question and they all go, well, I agree with what the first person said. Right, because there's no different school of thought. And I don't go to those events anymore. If I go to a panel and everyone says, I agree, after the first question, everyone agrees on everything, I just know, I get up and I go, and I'm just like, all right, I'm done. There's nothing of value to be heard here because you're all going to agree. Yeah. The one thing I love about having you on and when we get to do these is you and I don't have to see eye to eye to 1, like each other. Number 2, have discourse. Number 3, still like each other after we have the discourse. And I think that's so critical. It's so critical to have not only different people on the panel, but different points of view, people who disagree with the premise of the idea. For years, I hated zero trust. For years, it's documented on my show. I can't run away from it. I hated zero trust. I thought zero trust was a bad name and a horrible concept. I then took some time and studied it, and I turned around. I understand it now. I still think John should have hired a marketing person to rename zero trust something else.
Yes.
But as a policy, as a direction, as a philosophy for those practitioners, it's a decent philosophy. It's execution, much more difficult than stated. There's no one solution to get you to zero trust. But for years, I disliked it. I'm willing to admit that. I've evolved.
Wow. I never thought those words would come out of your mouth, James. I've evolved.
Because I think that's the sign of maturity. That's the sign of leadership.
We all have to change. You should have seen me 10 years ago. I was a bull in a china shop. And we all evolve. I still am, but
What do you mean by that? What do you mean you were a bull in a china shop?
Probably more than 10 years ago. I was one of those very annoying people who are terrible to manage because I always wanted to be a leader. I wanted to lead the show. I wanted to be the one in charge. I knew the answers. I wanted to come up with a strategy and stuff. And, I do not do well with hierarchy. Don't play titles on me ever. It just does not work. I don't care. I'm not going to go hang out with the janitor. I'll be honest.
Can I ask you this? Can you practice security effectively with titles?
Oh, no, it's in everyone's game. I mean, that's the thing about it is I don't like the CISO title. It's, yeah, but you've got to have titles to be in a corporation, right?
The question is, as a leader, do I have to enforce the titles, or are titles just advanced pay grades?
Yeah, they're
Right?
advanced pay grades. They're resume builders. That's it.
I will tell you that in my last role as a CISO, whenever we went into a room to solve a problem, and I mean a room, a Zoom, a Teams meeting, in person, wherever it was, I had a mantra, kind of like Ted Lasso has a believe. And
Yeah.
it said, no titles, no egos.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
We're here to solve a problem.
Yeah.
If a level 1 analyst solves the problem, hooray for them.
Yeah. Big
But
kudos.
everyone gets to be heard. Everyone gets to be heard. No, if you pull rank, you're out of the meeting.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot.
That's
It
been my
doesn't
philosophy.
matter, you know?
I don't know that everyone knows everything.
No. I just said this morning on a webcast, actually, that when somebody, one of my pet peeves, you've been in security for a very long time when people call themselves IAM expert or security expert or database security expert or AWS expert. Every time I see that on LinkedIn, I'm just like, don't even reach out. Don't even reach out to me. I will not connect with you. I cannot stand it. What, you've been in the industry for 5 years and you're a AWS security expert. Plus, well, that is arrogant in itself. But then also, I've been in security for 21 years. I know stuff pretty well. But every day something blindsides me. Like, what is that? Where did that come from? Or that's a really interesting idea. Wow, that's interesting. I need to add that to the brain. So for me to go around and say I'm an expert, even though I've been around for 21 years, is so arrogant.
The expert title has been misused. I have several rules around connecting in LinkedIn. And if anyone says expert, ninja, anything of this nature, we're probably not gonna. You're probably gonna get the follow button and not the connect button on my profile. I've been advocating for LinkedIn to allow us to kind of filter who gets the connect button and who gets the follow button.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, let me just put keywords and then have follow show up, and then let me have keywords and have connect show up, and let me have keywords and let it be, how come we're not BFFs yet? Button, right?
Well, let me tell you, you think you get weird stuff on LinkedIn? You should ask a woman in security. What stuff we get. Holy moly.
Naomi Buckwalter and I, during the early days of the pandemic, if you remember, we had you on one of the CISO Thursday segments with Christoph and Renee.
Yes.
So her and I did a bunch of shows, and one of which was we went through her LinkedIn inbox together. And we went through some of the messages she got. And there was a part of me that day that wanted to OSINT all of these individuals and take a screenshot of what they had sent Naomi and mail it to their friends and family and spouses and girlfriends and be like, this is the person you think so highly of in your life.
Oh, yeah.
This is what they do on a professional social networking network.
Yeah.
I
have to say, most are very, professional. They're fine. I mean, I got one the other day that I first saw it in my Gmail because it sends it to me, right? The notification. And the subject line was you. That's it. YOU. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody's stalking me. Like, who is this? So I checked out on LinkedIn and I was like, who is this person? Because I'm like, are they stalking me? And there it says, and it's some sales rep who put the you in there, not thinking about it, but then put, the rest of the question or whatever statement. And I reached out to a woman who's on the board of directors for that company. And I said, you need to pass this along to whomever leads sales, because that is freaky for a woman to see the word you
alone in a subject line.
Alone in a subject line.
There's very little to the fact that you get that. My wife gets some really weird messages on LinkedIn. She's shown me some of the stuff she's gone over months and years, and I'm just,
yeah.
I just look at her and I shake my head and I go, "We're not all like that.
No.
I promise."
And that's the thing. You all aren't like that. I mean, it's just very uncomfortable. It's like, well, why can't women be on LinkedIn as well?
Well, they are, and they should be,
Yeah.
and they'll continue to be. And I don't think there's very little anyone could do to change that. It's those voices that create that uncomfortable environment that I don't want to say need to be kicked off the platform, because I don't believe in censorship, but at the same time should be educated in terms of what's proper behavior when speaking to the opposite sex is kind of important. Olivia, you and I have been chatting for so long already, and I wanted to ask you this. So you've served as a CISO for some really big companies. You've kind of taken a step back. You've walked away from it. You've started your own business as a virtual CISO. So instead of one boss, you have 100 now. One, what made you make the jump? And two, is grass greener on the other side?
Well, it's interesting because I'm a big believer in when a door closes, another one opens.
Right.
And I left my last role as CISO in August. I was so burnt out, I didn't even recognize myself. And I was acting certain ways. I wasn't going to the gym. I was drinking too much. And I was very irritable and all the signs of burnout. And I was of no use to anyone, especially my team. I mean, and I recognized that. So I left. I took about a month off, got back into the gym, did all the things to recover. Then I was interviewing for CISO roles, and I interviewed for a lot. Because one of the benefits of being diverse in a male-dominated industry is that you get called to a lot of interviews because they got to meet their quota. However, you also get called into a lot of BS interviews where that they're not going to give you the job and that you are just a quota number. So it can bite both ways. But anyway, I had a lot of interviews. And I made it to the end several times. And the market late last year was pretty rough. So it wasn't just for me, but pretty rough in general. So yeah, it was pretty rough. And then, I just kept missing out. It was weird. And so I got really frustrated and just like, and then I started thinking, I don't even know if I want to be a CISO anymore. And this was in November, and I said, I don't think I want to be. And then I realized, no, I don't. I'm assuming that I should be because it's what I was. And I'm assuming that it's expected of me. And there is a lot of pressure on, I just speak for women, but I think this is all diversity, women who are leaders, because it's very hard, honestly, to be seen as this role model because there's a lot of pressure on you and it's exhausting, and you're expected to speak and represent and meet with all the young women and diverse talent, and it's exhausting. I mean, white men don't necessarily have that level of requirements or expectations put on them to nurture and raise up the next generation. Now, there are men who are great allies of diversity and do that, quite a big deal, quite a great deal. But the difference is that, boom, you're a woman, you're different, you are expected to do this. And I get called into everything and I get pulled in all directions, just like all women senior leaders do. So I started to look at I really, even with that expectation on me that I should stay to be a CISO, because it's expected of me to raise others up behind me. I kind of went, it's time for me to be selfish and do what I'm good at. And I have 17 years experience in consulting, in advisory CISO work before I became a CISO. And I need to go back to what I'm good at and do my own thing. So middle of November, started my own, hung my own shingle, as they call it. And then it, kind of moseyed around over December. And then early January, it just exploded. And I'm very fortunate. It's exhausting, but I'm very fortunate and lucky. But it's been a great ride.
So one of the bigger challenges, you talked about it right there, is burnout, right? And the expected leadership. It's very true that in most situations, mentorship is a nice to have for most people, but it's almost a must have. And if you're not doing it, you're not really supporting the next generation. There's almost an unfair expectation there. Like women don't do enough, but you've also got to be a mentor. You've also got to advocate. You've also got to go here. You've also got to do this. You've also got to do that. And that creates, I think, a toll.
Yes.
And a level of expectations that's not put on everyone else. Like I don't have that level of expectation in my role as a CISO. No one comes to me and goes, James, you should probably do some more mentorship. When I do it, people are like, oh, great, wonderful. You're mentoring people, but no one comes and says you have to do it. I think with women in leadership positions, irregardless whether they're a CISO or a CEO, that's almost like part of the job description at this point.
It's expected. I don't remember the name for it, but there's been articles about how even if you're 50-50 at home doing, just splitting the chores, for example, women still do more. And that's research backed. And women at work are expected to volunteer to throw the parties or set up the groups.
My wife does a whole lot more than me. I'll tell you that right now.
And of course I'm generalizing here. Right?
No, that's fine.
At work, women are expected to be on the party committee, or to start up this, and I'm like, what? It was a few months ago, and I actually wrote a LinkedIn post, and I've written some explosive ones, but I always toe the line. This one jumped the line, and I never posted it, but I really was just irritated that women and Black senior leaders, men or women, or diverse leaders, or any other race, why are we so on deck all the time to make change? Because there are some people, I'm on the board of Cybersecurity, which is supporting women and underrepresented minorities in cybersecurity. There are some people on the board who every single day are doing these big things, meetings, trainings to raise up, the younger generation. And I'm like, what the hell why do we have to work so much more? And if you don't do it, which some women don't, and that's okay. I think it's okay. I think it's fine. You can choose what you want to do. But as a society, whether you want to hear this or not, and whether you want to accept what I'm saying or not, it's true. If you don't step up and provide that level of support to the younger generation, it's looked down on because you're supposed to. And so I went off on this rant. I'm like, this is why we're so exhausted.
So I'm going to agree with you on something, and I'm going to push back on another one.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to agree with you to the fact that everyone needs to do their part in mentorship and bringing up the next generation.
Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't build a succession plan from the first day they step into their role or into their company or into their job or into building their own business, if you don't build a succession plan, you're not building a legacy. You're building a income stream that you work for and in, and therefore you can never scale. Right.
But and again, CISO, that's okay. If that's what you want.
If that's what you want.
Yeah. That's a choice.
but I feel like in most cases, human biology and human behavior is you want to do more, right? Everyone, that's why burnout happens. Burnout happens at every level. I mean, we CISOs talk about it a lot, but burnout happens at almost every level. I mean, we can look at our teams and go, anyone in security has burnout, and burnout is real, sure, but IT also has burnout, infrastructure,
Yeah.
DevOps,
Yeah.
they all have burnout. Burnout is real because it's part of the stress of life and part of the stress of the job. And we work and we live, and the two don't always mesh because our
Right.
personal lives don't always mesh with our professional lives.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that happen along the way that could impact us personally, that could impact our performance or our ability to focus professionally.
Yeah.
Now, where I would push back on a little bit is the concept of that this is only on women or diverse leaders. This is on everyone. The challenge there is that HR and the people who are really trying to build these mentorship programs typically end up going to the people almost. You said it early on in on the show.
Yeah.
You know how those panel people always go to the people who always say yes.
Yeah.
HR people go to the mentorship people, to people that know are going to say yes. They're
Yeah.
not going to go to the other person who they may have to work a little bit harder to convince them to be a mentor and take on some people. They're not going to do that. They're going to go to the yes folks all the time. HR
Yeah.
people do it consistently. They don't invest time in making sure that the responsibility of any leader at any level, whether C-suite, VP, director, or manager level, has a responsibility in mentoring and building a succession plan. That's the number one reason why we still have gaps and why
Mhm.
you're working 10 times harder than other people at building the next group of
Well,
leaders.
I think we're saying the same thing.
We are
Yeah.
almost.
So, yeah.
I mean,
But I think that on top of that, there's also an individual accountability and responsibility in my mind. I mean, if you don't want to, that's a luxury that the majority in any industry gets to have. If you don't want to put in extra work and have to represent and be around for questions and mentoring sessions, that's your choice. But you're not looked down on by, you're not looked down on a societal basis.
right.
And women, and I'm only speaking for women, but I know it's all diversity, women are constantly looked down on. I mean, I have honestly every single day at least 5 emails from people. At least. I'm so behind on LinkedIn because of this. At least 5 emails from people saying, hey, can you help me? Can we talk? Or I want to introduce you to somebody who's this young person, blah, blah, blah. And anytime I say no, which I really try to do because I have to make money somehow, right? For my own survival. I have to have a job to do. And every time I say no, it's this weird, screw you kind of response. Well, why don't you go to, the 5 white men,
Well,
who
so
are next to me?
let me give you an example of this in my life to kind of balance this. As a vet, I'm often called upon by people who are getting ready to get discharged, that need some guidance, that want some mentorship and from their transition from military to civilian life. And very admirable. I try to say yes, but I can't always say yes.
You can.
And in the last, year and a half of my life, my wife was pregnant. We had a baby. I was in a startup that you and I've shared, stories about. And I didn't have time. I was traveling every single week. And when I was home, I blocked out my calendar because guess what? I was away Monday through Thursday. And when I came home, all I wanted to do was spend time with my young son and wife. And my wife was alone with a baby for 4 days trying to work and raise a kid. And that's not an easy feature at all. And in Texas playing CISO at a startup, right?
Right.
And that's very, very difficult. And I've said no. And I've had people tell me like, what do you mean you can't? What? Like, go screw yourself. And I was like, well, sorry you feel that way. That's not a good way to approach a mentor or someone who you wanted to walk you through it. But I've got a limited amount of time. I can't half-ass anything I do in my life. I can't. It's just not in my DNA to half-ass anything. So I'm sorry. And I can't do it. And I think to anyone listening who goes, well, I'm gonna reach out to Olivia or James and see if I can get a mentor, I'd say consider the fact that it's very hard for us to balance our families, our
Mhm.
careers, our hobbies, our us time, our education time, which is very overlooked by many professionals. We don't know everything. We
Yeah.
have to invest time in educating ourselves on new technologies, on new processes, on new regulatory frameworks, on new regulatory requirements, on new business changes, or give you a long list of things. Um, it's not easy, and
Yeah.
I don't think most people recognize it, Olivia.
Well, right. And doesn't it, can I swear on here?
You can. I'll just mark the episode as explicit.
I mean, doesn't it piss you off? I don't know
It,
if that's swearing, but doesn't it piss you
it
off?
does.
I mean, that there's this big wedge of concrete that you're supposed to carry, but there are people who don't do anything.
I I've come to a realization in my life that I can't expect everyone to do what I do, and I can't expect everyone to have the same values and morals that I do. That's what differentiates us as people. You
Yes.
and I have more
Mhm.
of a giving back value that seems to be more superior to our personality and our type of leadership and
Yeah.
who we are as individuals. And some other people are, I'm gonna go clock in at 8. I'm gonna leave exactly at 5.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do an ounce more than what I'm supposed to do. I'm gonna do my job description to the checklist.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get satisfactory for performance. I'm not trying to exceed. I'm going to get my 3.5% or 4% raise every single year. And that's my life.
Yeah.
And you and I, if you told us that's our life, our
Oh,
personalities, there's
ugh.
nothing wrong with that. Again, there's nothing wrong with that with the
Right.
people who choose that.
Yeah.
We're not dissing you. We're not
No.
saying you're not good people. That's not our personality trait. We are very much into legacy building. And we want to see that young generation come up because we know that makes a better world for us. When
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
a-
everyone. And our
when
own
I'm
kids.
yeah, for our own kids,
Yeah.
for our future, for humanity. Cybersecurity, there's one thing. I looked at the national cybersecurity strategy that the White House released last week, and it said cybersecurity is not just a function anymore. It represents every aspect of our lives today
Mhm.
in the world.
Mhm.
And we've got to stop looking at it. I just did a podcast with Dmitry Sokolovsky, right?
Mhm.
And he said, we're not into cybersecurity. We need to stop saying it. We're in the business risk space.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's a great way to
that's
put it.
fair. Yeah.
It's a great way
So
to put it.
one final question before I put you on the hot seat,
Uh-oh.
because we're a bit over time, but I don't care. This conversation is so good. I don't want it to end, but I need to be mindful of your time. So one final question.
Mhm.
Would you ever go back to being a CISO now that you're a VCISO?
I always say never, because that would be stupid to say. Because if the most beautiful company came along with the most beautiful salary, I would give it heavy thought. But that I'm not really in the mood for fighting my way anymore. So right now, no, wouldn't go back. But never say never.
I love the fact that you went out on your own. I think
Yeah.
that's more inspiring than being a CISO at a big company. The reason I say that is because my wife, who was an entrepreneur since 2008, that she started her own. She's been her own boss since 2008.
Wow.
Um, I see what she has to go through to do and win business, to make sure her clients are happy, to make sure that she's able to do that. And I think for my daughter, who's 17 going on 18, that's inspiring to see her stepmom do that. I think
Aw.
for other women around her, it's inspiring to see her, go out and be on your own, and don't let anyone take you down, Olivia. You will be a smashing success.
Aw, thank
I
you.
know that for sure. I'm gonna
Well,
put you on the hot seat now that I've complimented you.
okay.
Are you ready?
All right.
You're joining the
I'm
hundreds of
ready.
other CISOs that have had to answer these questions.
Uh-oh.
I've got a buzzword graveyard. Give me one buzzword you'd bury.
Oh, well, I mean, there's the usual ones, right? I can't stand the term woman CISO. Can't stand it.
That's a new one. So the last 3 episodes have all had brand new buzzwords. I've been digging holes way more than I thought I would be on the show. But women CISO, I agree. You're a CISO.
Yeah, you're a CISO. Just like if you're a comedian, you're a comedian. If you're, like things like girl boss, you're a boss.
Or a her boss.
Or her boss. It's like, oh my God. I can't stand it. When I'm introduced as a woman CISO, I'm like, well, they were introduced as CISOs. Why can't I be a CISO? Why am I a woman CISO?
So next time you get that introduction, you should be like, the organization I work for isn't woman. But thank you.
That's not
you may have gotten the name wrong. Yeah. What's the last song you listened to?
An Israeli song, actually. The song Hallelujah came out for the Eurovision, I think in the 70s, and won.
By Leonard Cohen.
Hallelujah, yep. That one. And they did a remix a few years ago in Israel, where they kind of spruced up the beat a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And Galiotari, who was on the original,
yep.
She sings, and so does this younger up and coming pop star. And it's really cool how they did it. But I like to listen to that in the morning, because it's very rejuvenating. That the world, it's like listening to "It's a Beautiful World" every morning for me.
Yeah, so I listen to a lot of Israeli music.
Yeah.
My wife says, you may have been born and raised in America, but you're more Israeli than most Israelis. Because I listen to like some really cool Mediterranean music. So I'll listen to artists like Itai Levi or Payretasi or Eyal Golan. But then I'll also listen to like some Hebrew rappers like Tuna and Liminal and others. And so, and that's how I start my mornings typically. And then when I bathe my son, we listen to there's an Israeli band called the Revivo Project. And they do like they take old songs and they do like a mashup of songs and whatnot. And so they sing in Hebrew, in Arabic, in Moroccan Arabic, in French, and English. So they do these mashups. And my son, who's year and a half, just absolutely loves it. He's like, "Oh, this is so great." Mashups. And so I totally agree. There's some upbeat music and stuff there.
There's some good stuff coming, like To Do Bomb. You must.
Static and Benel. To Do
Bomb.
They broke up though. They broke up.
Oh, they did.
Static and Benel broke up last year. Benel's now living in Los Angeles.
Wow. And then there's the one, the Tel Aviv song. You're my beauty. No, I'm your beauty. You're my beauty. Welcome to
You're my beauty, I'm your beast. Welcome to Tel Aviv. Ya Habibi.
Tel Aviv.
Ya Habibi, Tel Aviv. תסתכל כמה לירדים מסביב.
ונהני היי, כל לילה וואי.
Someone tuned into the podcast and they got Omer Adam. I bet you there's a bunch of Israelis that are listening to this now going, what are those two CISOs doing?
Or what are those songs that they're singing? We don't know.
Every person in Israel that works in high tech knows the Tel Aviv song, Omer Adam. Omer Adam is by far one of the biggest music stars in Israel. I mean,
I think it came out a while ago, but
6-7 years ago. Yeah,
anthem for the Pride Week in Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
And you're like,
and Pride Week in Tel Aviv is huge. It's like a million people. Like people fly into Tel Aviv from all over Europe and the US and like all over. They shut down Tel Aviv. I'm going next month for Passover.
Oh, nice.
But I may go again in June because of the teammate CISO.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to.
Yeah, I may go again in June for that.
Yeah. So you
debating.
should come to that. Yeah.
If I go to Tel Aviv in June, I'm never going to go to any event. I'm just going to be at the beach surfing all day. Like that's the hardest part for me to go to Israel in the summer is I end up on like I've done conference calls with my AirPods in and I'm on a SAP board just standing in the water. Just, people are like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm on my SAP board. Doing what? I'm like, I'm just cruising around in the ocean. I'm like, yeah. Seriously? And I was like, yep. I got my wetsuit on and I've got my phone inside my wetsuit and I've got my AirPods and I've got a hat on and it's keeping my AirPods in and yeah.
That's pretty clever. Yeah.
I take, you know, I've had a few people cuss me out for that. They're like, "Is that water I hear under you?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm sitting on my sap board and just pedaling
On the Mediterranean.
on the Mediterranean in beautiful temperature water, like
I
70,
can't wait to
78."
go back.
Yeah, I love Israel so much. All right, finally, what's the last book or what current book are you reading?
I'm fascinated by North Korea. I think the
Okay.
whole hermit kingdom, thought process, and I mean, I'm just fascinated by it. So I read anything that's written by somebody who escapes it. And there's a book called In Order to Live that was written by a girl. Well, she escaped when she was, I think, 13 or 14, went to China, got sold into a sex ring. I mean, it's just nuts. And now she's in the States, and she came out recently with another book, but she's interesting because she's the one who came out with that explosive comment recently. You may have seen it, that said she actually finds, because she's in college, she actually finds all the cancellation culture and how students are in some colleges, how they're thinking, and they're all thinking alike and they're very woke and so forth. She said that's actually more restrictive than what she experienced in North Korea, which seems like a far stretch to me. But
I'm gonna take someone's word who lived in North Korea and now is at a U.S. college campus than someone on a college campus.
Yes, I think it has some pieces of accuracy in there, because I think nowadays you can't say anything that's against the culture.
This kind of goes to a Yosef Haddad, who's a Arab Israeli who served in the IDF, was the son of a Hamas leader.
Whoa!
Right, who didn't believe in his dad's ways, who's now on his own dime, goes around college campuses and speaks about, tries to, disprove the apartheid in Israel, apparently. So there's apartheid in Israel. I didn't know it. I mean, I lived there for 5 years. Went in front of an Arab judge. I'm Jewish, just so happened, so there's that, and an apartheid that would never happen. But he goes to college campuses where people protest his even mere existence on campus. They're just like, wasn't college campuses, I can go back 30, 40, 50, 60 years, the place where these kind of conversations, that was like the place to have these conversations.
Right. You don't need to agree. You need to talk it out. I remember when I was in college, and this was many, many years ago, and there was a guy who was a Holocaust denier, and he used to come onto the campus all the time, and they let him because it was free speech. But
still is free speech.
But I never reported him, because even though I think he's an idiot, because that's his opinion. And I remember one day I was talking with him and going back and forth, and he has his opinion, which has been proven to be inaccurate, unfortunately, that the Holocaust did happen and the concentration camps did exist. And you know what? We were never going to see eye to eye. But did I go running crying to the media? Or
you didn't go ask for a safe space. That's
I didn't ask for a safe space. Like, oh my God, it's just like, okay, you learn from it. You think, okay, there's somebody who we're never going to agree with. I think his opinions are damaging, but hopefully people are intelligent enough to make up their own decisions and minds, instead of me trying to say, no, he cannot be here ever because it's dangerous to people who listen to, what he's saying.
I have to completely agree with you. We live in a time where there's a lot of anti-Semitism, and I want to be mindful of our time because we're almost done here. But I will say this. I've experienced just recently anti-Semitism leaving my shul right here in Georgia. Ooh. Right. Ew. Like, and you and I don't live far apart. Like, we could have done this in person.
We are in white bread, Georgia. Let's put it that way. Well, we are in very good school districts.
We're in an area where you would think this wouldn't be happening because we don't live in out where they've never seen Jews, right? Yeah. Like, let's put it like that. And someone said, well, we should call the cops, and I was like, their First Amendment rights to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
they're entitled to do it. I don't have to agree with them. I don't have to like it.
Yeah.
They're wrong.
Yeah, they're wrong.
That's
It's
it.
not nice.
It's not nice, but then again, not everyone's going to be nice. Not everyone's going to see the same way I do. Not everyone's going to agree with me, and I'm okay with that because that's the beauty of this country. That's why this country is so different from so many other countries. It's you and I don't have to agree to still be neighbors, to still be friends, to still go out and have drinks, to still go out and eat dinner, to still celebrate holidays and still be a community. And we need to go back to that. Olivia, Rose, the amazing, the magnificent folks. We're 15 minutes over what a typical episode goes, and we could have gone for another hour if we had the time.
Talking about Israeli music and cancel culture.
and talking about starting your own business and diversity and leadership, and we covered a lot of different topics on today's episode. And I'm just grateful that you took the time to be with us here today, Olivia, and sharing so much wisdom and really being able to challenge the status quo. I think keep doing what you're doing. You're a positive voice for our industry.
Oh, well, thank you. And you are as well. I mean, you definitely are out there as well. But I would just say, if I can make a request to those who are listening, who are still hanging on, if you are in the majority and there's no diversity, please step up and say something. You don't need to drop off the panel if you don't, if it's important to you. Okay, that's fine. But say something. I'm going to call it out. Wallarm, about a month ago, appointed a 12 male advisory council.
Yep.
And I went to their website. I'm like, it's 12 men. There's no Black. There's no Latino. It's all 12 men. And I'm like, how does nobody say something? Because if somebody said something, then they would try a little harder.
Disrupting the status quo is harder than what some people think, but it's required and needed in order to bring about a level of equality. And equality is leveling out the playing field so women have the same chance as men do for everything. And they're not just part of all right, I've got to interview Olivia Rose because we haven't interviewed any women for this job, and we need to get a woman there. I remember talking to you back several months ago, pre-New Year, I think around October, November, when not last time I saw you, but before that, and you were telling me this, and I was just so infuriated. I was exhausted that day when I saw you, but I was ready to just I had to go outside and just take a breath of fresh air after our conversation because it agitated me to know that this still happens in 2023 and that HR, which is predominantly women in a lot of organizations, still does this and allows it to happen.
They allow it to happen. And it's just like, just help us out. The thing is, people who aren't white men don't want your jobs. There's plenty of jobs for everyone. And I understand it's hard to be a white man nowadays because everyone's yelling at you about equal opportunity. And sometimes you feel like, there is an unfair advantage. But so we've gone too far in some ways. And I get that. So to be able to move the needle back to where it needs to be in the middle, we need equality here. So we don't go on either
Equality
way.
for opportunity, folks, not result, right? Equality of opportunity. If you're going to interview 10 people for a role, try to make it so that it's a diverse pool of people and not, potentially a majority. And this, by the way, goes across not just white men. When you look at DevOps roles, you'll typically get, 8 people of Southeast Asian descent and then 2 of not, 2 that are not there. I mean, the same goes across both of those. It goes across all kinds of different kind of prejudice and pre-thoughts of the idea of what the right person in that role should be. So, you hit it on the head, and I couldn't agree more with that statement right there. Is be a voice. I always say I'm going to hire the best person for the job, and I don't care who they are. And so, but I'm going to interview everyone who I think has a remote opportunity of being able to bring me a different school of thought to the business. And so
that's right. I remember you saying that last time I saw you. Yeah.
So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. All right, y'all. The awesome, magnificent, amazing, always smart Olivia Rose. Thank you everyone for tuning in.
My goodness, my ego.
the CISO Talk podcast. Make sure to subscribe. You can check out, I'm going to put Olivia's LinkedIn in the show notes. So anyone who wants to connect with her, not for mentorship purposes and not for sales purposes, can do so. If you send her a note with just you in the title, I am going to name you after this podcast. I promise.
Just watch me get 20 of them.
When you get it, just send it over to me. I'm going to shame them. We're going to blast them on LinkedIn.
No, I find it funny because now it's a joke.
Now it is a joke, but still, someone shouldn't be doing it, right? Either way, thanks, Olivia. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, stay cyber safe, y'all.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. And get all the latest information at cyberhubpodcast.com.